Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Expat Interviews. I'm Caroline, and as always, I go all over the world looking for the most amazing expats doing the most amazing things. And this time, today, I did not have to go too far because there is someone that I want to introduce to you, and he's not very far away, and he's doing some really amazing things and can't wait to share them with you. So, listen in. All right, so I am here today with a very handsome gentleman and someone that you're going to just feel just so good and warm and fuzzy when you hear the wonderful things that he's doing, selflessly, right? We always do things sometimes for ourselves, but when we actually do things to help other people, it just really takes us to another level. I want to welcome you, Michael, to Expat Interviews. Thank you so much for joining and sharing with me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Caroline. I really appreciate the opportunity.
It's my pleasure. So let's just get into, just if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about, you're an expat here in Mexico, and where are you from
Yes.
originally?
I'm originally from Los Angeles, California.
LA,
LA,
LA.
yeah. Originally from LA, but I've been a lot of different places as a result of military career. I did 22 years in the military, and but South Central Los Angeles was home, and in the Inland Empire as well, Fontana, California. My family and everything was out there as well.
Okay,
But
so growing up in LA and California, I mean, that's a place where you see and do and hear a lot of different things. So
yeah,
you joined the military as a young man?
yeah, I indeed, like you just mentioned, I grew up in the Southern California area during the 80s, and gang banging and all that good stuff was going on really strong back then. I've got cousins and uncles and aunties and everybody else who was involved in that scene there, and that's where I started off originally as a kid, and we moved out a little bit further away from that, like to the Inland Empire, is like maybe 50 miles away from Los Angeles, but that whole culture there was still never really took its finger off my family. We've always had that stuff present.
So you joined the military. What branch?
Army.
Army. Thank you for
Yes,
your
yes.
service. How long were you in the service?
I did a total of 22 years between active duty and reserve component. I did my initial tour was 5 years, and I got out the first time and came back home and got into federal government work, and then I stayed in the reserve component, and then 9/11 kicked off and got activated during that time, and ended up going back overseas and everything for 2 years. And by that time, I just decided to rather than go back to the job that I was doing, I decided to stay in the military and try to finish out that way. And then I went in eventually from there. I went into recruiting command in Georgia. I did work for the Georgia Army National Guard up as a recruiter there, and a senior ROTC instructor, and a couple of different positions that I did there. And then retired from that and went back into the federal government service. I worked for the VA for 7 years prior to splitting off and deciding to go and make this thing happen down in Mexico.
So you just ate, slept, and breathed with my Uncle Sam for a long time, didn't
Yes, yeah, imagine
you?
that. 30 plus years combined military and federal service to this nation. And ironically, I'd have to go to another nation to find healing. Imagine that.
Yeah, and I'm anxious to talk to you about that component. I uh, wanted to mention, before you share what you're doing, that, and I'm sure you know this, a lot of people don't understand what it's like to be and in the military, or I should say, to come from a military background and be free. And I hear so many
Yes.
stories. I have met here in Mexico, many veterans. And honestly, the stories that they tell me of things that have happened to them and their life and their mental, it's really like very touching. And a lot of
Yes.
people aren't aware of, how it affects you being in the military. we're so proud to have you out there putting yourself out on the line and, being,
Yeah.
the front line. But
Mhm.
when you come out, like, who helps you? You helped us all those years, but now
Exactly.
who's there to help you? So could you just go into a little bit before we talk about you coming to Mexico, but what are some of the things that you experienced once you decided to just cut free?
Yes, ma'am. So I'm glad you just said what you did because the thing about the population that joins the military in our country is normally kids that just like I just got through talking about my story. I mean, I couldn't wait to get away from home. So you leave home with one bag of stuff over your shoulder that you never really resolved, and then you run off to the military and you're going to get a whole nother bag full of stuff that's unresolved, and then you come out of the military, you stand there with two bags on your shoulder that nobody's going to help you unpack, the help that they have available. I mean, the VA, they try, they do their thing, I guess, but of course that's regulated and mandated in a whole different way. That's a whole other different conversation. But the access to modalities that are out there that can actually help us is kind of limited, because when you go to the VA to try to get any type of mental health awareness or any type of mental health help, you're going to get pills. You're going to get the pill program, and then here recently they've given some other things. They're kind of leading toward a holistic treatment route. However, it's just not happening fast enough. I mean, at the end of the day, there's almost 50 veterans a day killing themselves. And these numbers aren't going to go any further.
But isn't it also just limitations? I mean, the VA is but
Mm-hmm.
so much, and they can only help but so many people with so many issues. I mean, because
Yes.
there's a wide range of injuries, right?
Mm-hmm.
In combat and just other things, and
Yes.
then you have the other emotional components. So I don't think they have the capacity to be able to help everyone, even if they wanted to.
They don't, and this is nothing new. I mean, this goes all the way back to the folks who fought back in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and all these places. What we have to look at now and consider about that is just the generational differences. When our grandfathers and everybody came back from war, it was like, oh, they're just shell shocked. Leave Uncle alone. He gonna get him a bottle of liquor, he'll be all right. And that's pretty much what it was. That was what constituted the treatment that people got, and going forward, all of that has evolved to we're in a whole different time, space, and era right now, where the questions and the answers are all different than they were 50 years ago, and we must move up and catch up with what's available out there to fix this stigma, because it's not just veterans. I mean, that number is almost 50 a day, but if you talk about the total U.S. suicide number, that's up almost 500 a day.
And that is just unbelievable. I
Yes,
mean,
ma'am.
just to hear those numbers, it's like, I do have a cousin who was in the Vietnam War, and even though that
Mm-hmm.
was a long time ago, but I can tell you, Michael, I can share with you, and we know how long ago that was, but to this
Yeah,
day, he has not recovered from his experience
that's right.
there. And so this is not something that you just, take a pill or snap a finger and it goes away, or okay, maybe. So
No.
I get it, on a personal level. But anyway, I
Mm-hmm.
want to jump into what brought you to Mexico? Why did you decide to come here?
Yes, that's a great segue into that. Is the access to alternative modalities. I mean, personally, myself, after the years in the military, I was somebody who came out, and the issues started manifesting in me in different ways than other folks. For me, I had retired in 2013, and 4 years later, I was damn near 300 pounds. I was just living a life that was just going through the motions, because it just everything else just felt numb, and I wasn't committed to anything that I was doing. I mean, I've always been a bright guy and able to pull it off, but none of it really ever meant anything. It was just honestly just going through the motions. I had got to a point in my life where I would have tried anything, just to feel better. And somebody told me about plant medicines. It was mushrooms, and to be exact, a guy told me about coming to a mushroom ceremony, and I said, well, this was 2.5 years ago. And I said, well, if that'll make me feel better, I'll be there. So I went, and I did a mushroom ceremony up in Phoenix, Arizona. And then the very next morning, they served this medicine called Bufal virus, which is the one that I'm working with now. That's the Sonoran toad desert, or the Sonoran desert toad medicine. And that very first ceremony that I had there in Phoenix, I've always been somebody who was seeking, deeper understanding of all kind of things. I mean, when I got deployed to the Middle East, I think during that year I read pretty much every holy book that was out there. I had been doing that my whole life anyway. I was born in born in LA, and our family was pretty much, Southern Baptist, go to church every Sunday, get in the Cadillac, don't ask no questions, that kind of thing. And, that was my whole life. But even back then, I had plenty of questions, which led into adulthood. But anyway, to wrap that up and bring full circle, that first night that I had the experience with the mushrooms, all of it just came into an alignment and made perfect sense to me. And the very next morning when I tried the Bufal virus medicine, I knew after that day that this is what veterans needed in order to have a mind, body, and soul reset. Because that's really all this is about. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a spiritual retreat that we're doing down here, and it's a spiritual reset that folks need. I mean, you can take all the pills that you want to, but if you don't sit down and reset that spirit.
Okay, so explain a little bit to my viewers who might be wondering, mushrooms, that sounds a little psychedelic and it sounds a
Yes,
little maybe illicit or illegal.
absolutely.
Could you just go a little bit more into exactly what that
Yes.
type of
Okay.
therapy is?
Yeah. So mushrooms, of course, they've been around since forever. However, in our society in the United States, military especially, there's a kind of a stigma and a hippie connotation type of thing. They think that folks take mushrooms and get drunk and dance, or not get drunk, but get high and dance around, and
Yep,
it's a big hippie thing. But
yep.
at the end of the day, the quantifiable data has been there for hundreds of years as it pertains to the how these things work, and rewiring the brain and your nervous system and everything else, and expanding and opening parts of your mind that will allow you to process your emotions and everything else in a whole different fashion than what we're normally accustomed to. These traditional medicines have been around for thousands of years amongst these tribes. Mushrooms is just one of them. Ayahuasca is another. The Bufal virus is one that's recently come into use there. There's just, of course, marijuana as well. All of these different things are medicinal in nature, and they've been used by indigenous folks for medicinal and spiritual healing purposes. It's just that, the stigma that we have in the United States, we can go all the way back to the formation of the DEA and those things, and all of the campaigns that are out there. They're marijuana, for example. We can go there. Marijuana treats 200 or 300 different known issues for people. So that's kind of why it took so long for it to become legal. If you got one particular drug that's natural that can, or not drug, but one medicine that's natural that can treat 200 or 300 different things. Now all of a sudden we don't need 200, 300 different these pharmaceutical things that are out there on the market making millions. And that's kind of how that works.
So these therapies, because that's what they are in essence,
Yes.
these therapies that you have, how were you introduced to them? I know you said you attended an event, but then you came to Mexico. I mean, where did you begin?
Okay, so I was introduced to the ceremonies in Phoenix, Arizona. I was introduced to it through somebody who was in the motorcycle community. And we have a friend up in Phoenix who was doing this type of work, serving this medicine. Of course, you're not supposed to hear, but it's going on. I mean, it's going on everywhere. So I'll just put it out there. Everybody knows that. But when I had the experience there in Phoenix, and I knew that this is what veterans were going to need, going forward, or at least needing access to it. Because again, it's not for everybody, but having access to it is a good option. But I knew that I wanted to take it forward. I knew that I wanted to first, go further in my own healing journey with that particular medicine to see, what else was there for me. But once I felt sufficient, then I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn how to do this and how to come back and share it with other veterans. And at that time, the best information I had was that the Seri tribe, down in Mexico, the Comcaac Nation, were the guardians of this particular medicine right here in the Sonoran Desert. So at that time, I set out to make contact with somebody down there because I knew I wanted to go and learn with them. I was going to just go and throw all in on it because I knew that what I was doing at work every day didn't make any sense to me. So, I was going to go forward. So after a couple of emails and everything else, I was able to get in touch with one of the head medicine people down there and in the Comcaac Nation, and that's Shaman Luis Lopez. And I made contact with him via Facebook, and then we got to talking on WhatsApp. And I said I'm going to come down. So I went down, and the very first time I went, I had no idea what to expect. I knew that all I was, I knew that whatever knowledge I thought I was bringing, 22 years of this and masters and all that other kind of stuff meant nothing because I was coming there, to learn and to learn something that was, far beyond, what most folks would ever even think about. So I had to show up, humble. And when I did, I stayed that very first week. I spent a whole week out there with Luis. We slept on the island, we slept on the beach. It was just really going deep into that particular medicine. And I got to learn a little bit more about the Comcaac Nation and their history. And when I did, it was a story that just I could not even walk away from. I mean, this particular tribe down here in Mexico is, one of the only tribes here that was able to really preserve and keep their own culture, language, and everything else after the advent of the conquistadors. I mean, they're very special people down there, and they work a lot with this medicine. I mean, it hasn't been in their tribe for thousands of years or anything like that. There's no true long line of lineage of it. However, the things that they're doing with it now, they are definitely the guardians of this medicine, and this medicine is 5-MeO DMT. It's the exact same thing that is produced by our brains inside the pineal gland that allows us to go to sleep at night and reach into that REM state. So basically go ahead.
Well, I
Did
was
you have
going
a
to
question?
ask you, well, it's a very interesting, and I know that herbal medicine is, has always been something that many people do as alternative therapies because they do, in fact, work.
Yes. Mhm.
But what led you to believe that this would be a good therapy for the issues that you felt veterans were facing?
Um, for me at the time, like I had mentioned, I would have tried anything, just to feel better because I knew that, I had tried everything else. I went and laid and cried on the couch. I took all the pills. I did everything you said was going to help, and none of it did. So I knew that it had to be something different. I mean, after I started putting together back the things that I understood to be true about life, I understood that there's a forging process that every person has to go through. And then I had to sit still and think about my life, and I said, well, you know what, man, some of that stuff happened to you, but more of it happened for you. So all those skills and everything that you picked up, I mean, you don't have to forget them tomorrow. Now you can just use them for your real mission, and that's what this is now. I mean, my mission now is to, number one, give or help to get access to these modalities to veterans and everybody else. And number two, the other part of this mission is after falling in love with those folks down there and seeing how they're living and everything else, and seeing what the wonderful gift is that they have to give to the world, I decided to make it a twofold thing. I said I was going to initially come back up to the United States and form a medicine church or something else. But I said, no, I'm going to do it right here because number one, I don't feel like going back to the U.S. and playing their games, waiting around for them to act like, they don't know what's right. So the other thing, I can bring veterans and things down here, and the revenue and thing can help these folks at this location to be able to eat, just to be able to have sustainable income to do something there in the community. A lot of different projects we're working on down there as well, helping the artisans get their materials on the web and everything else, just school projects, the Seri Defense Force. I've been able to help get them some training with some of the soldiers that have come down in the past with us. So there's a lot of great things that are going on that I'm able to use my skill set that I know and bring people in with similar skill sets to help these folks while at the same time helping my veterans too. And it's just been a beautiful thing. These folks have a lot of love to give everybody that shows up. The quantifiable data is there. I don't have anybody that's got a sad look on their face after they leave here.
I bet, I bet. So
Mhm.
I wanted to just focus a little bit on, you have an association that you
Yes.
created. Just tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. So the name of what I had to do was figure out a way to to make something sustainable to accomplish what I wanted to do. When I first started out, I just was inviting friends and family to come down, and I would just have them meet me in Tucson, and we would get a van and come down. I'd rent a hotel, and we'd go out there and spend 3 or 4 days doing ceremony with my friends with the Seri tribe. And then it worked really well for a few times. And I said, well, you know what? Now I got to figure out how to do this sustainably. So I decided to go the 501(c) route. And it took me a while to come to that decision because of the nature of what's happening in the medicine space in the United States. Make no mistake, there are plenty of veteran organizations out there and everything else that they're collecting a whole lot of money for these things to happen. However, there's some gatekeeping going on, and we all know what that means. And it is what it is. However, um, in order to take things forward, um, collaborations must be made, and things need to happen that I'm prepared to do at this point. And we're making a lot of connections, to take this thing forward and demand the access for the veteran.
Wow, that is quite the task. But I guess when you have a calling and you just know you got to do what you got to do, it's you just do what you got to do. I really applaud you for that. And
Mhm.
I know it's not easy. I guess, especially when you have to deal with a lot of bureaucracy and just people unaware of a lot of things, because not everyone is aware of a lot of alternative healing therapies. People, call them names or
Yes.
experimental or what have you. And
Mhm.
but I'm happy that you have taken the initiative to just do what your heart, told you to do, and to help people that we just don't remember, that they're coming out of this situation that we call it, and they're not
Yeah.
coming out the same person that went in. And as you mentioned in the beginning, a lot of them went in with situations and they came out with more situations. So it's
Yes.
it's really a very unique and but deep kind of a thing. So, okay, so I want to post on this video. I will let people know your association and some of the things that you're doing. I guess you're going to have a website soon, right? And you also have a clothing line that you mentioned. Is that something that we can
Yes.
post also?
Yes, ma'am. That's one of the collaborations that I mentioned. In fact, the shirt that I've got on now is one of them. It's a Mental Joe. Mental Joe is a t-shirt company that's made by a friend of mine up in Phoenix, Arizona, and he does this. He's a 501(c) as well, and he does this to support access to these modalities for veterans. He's a former Army Ranger who had some mental health issues as a result of his service, and found his way back through ketamine, mushrooms, and these different types of treatments. And now he's cashed in everything he's got to put this message out there to people about getting these modalities available to everybody.
Now you're doing retreats here in Mexico.
Yes, yes.
Uh-huh.
Now the Healing Frontline Heroes, that organization that I put together. What happens with that one is the veterans come down for a 5-day visit. Day number one, we meet in Tucson, and we come down to Santa Ana, which is I have two locations. I live in Santa Ana, as well as I have a house down in Keno Bay. And Santa Ana is where we stop for the first night. We do a sweat lodge there, and then the next morning we head down to Punta Sueca, and then we do what's called a combo ceremony. So the sweat lodge ceremony, the first night, is really to get everybody in cohesion and getting them into that mindset of we're going to be here for this week together. And when we bring them in small group, I do 6 folks at a time like that, because small group learning and bonding is a great way to go. So we start off the very first night with the sweat lodge, and we start that bonding process. And also it's also an exercise in surrender, understanding that we have to take our mind to a different place in order for our body to process the things that are happening with these different medicines. So we'll start with a sweat lodge, and the very next day we do combo. Combo is a medicine that will produce a molecular purge of everything that's in your body, toxins and everything else. It's another toad medicine that's applied So that's day number 2. And then we do 3 days of the Bufo ceremonies with 5-MeO DMT.
So it's quite, and who are the monitors of
The
these?
facilitators, are all of the tribal medicine people. Shaman Luis is part of it. Gil and Adamaris, Gil is the commander of the Seri Defense Force there as well. So I've partnered with all of the facilitators in Punta Sueca to make this experience, for folks to come down and have with them. It's not me serving medicine. I have trained with them. I've done the initiation and everything. I spent a week on the island with Luis, and I've done that. However, this is not about me. This is not the Michael show when people come down there. This is for them to enjoy the experience with these indigenous people and have a true healing experience and just really connect to what's going on. We're not these folks that are out here running these $10,000 retreats. That's not what we're doing. Well, we're doing something. In fact, the veterans, when they come for free, and which is why I decided to go the 501(c) route so that we could get donations and everything to be able to send these guys down here. Like I said, back in the beginning when I started, I was inviting family and friends, and if my friends were veterans, they would come for free. But the folks that paid was able to make that happen. But now I was able to figure out a way to do this on a much larger scale, and the 501(c) is the way to go.
Wow, this is incredible, and I think we could take a couple hours to talk about this, but since we don't have that time, I
Yeah.
would love to ask you to do a call to action to your fellow veterans right now. Is there some message that you would like to give them for those
Yes.
that might be looking and wondering and that may want to reach out to you?
Absolutely. I will tell any veteran or first responder or anybody out there who has an issue, because that's not the only folks that we serve. We're here to get this medicine to everybody. But what I want to tell anybody who's struggling with issues from the past, the only thing that you have is the present. Depression is worrying about yesterday. Anxiety is worrying about tomorrow. The only thing that you can control is the present. So there is happiness, there's love, there's joy, there's everything right on the other side of this pain. Again, I mentioned earlier talking about that forging process. Everybody has to do that at some point. There's any number of distractions and everything else that'll keep us away from what our true, heart's calling and our true purpose is. However, we have to cut through those things, and if that takes, melting down to goo and coming back and deciding or seeing, exactly what that process looks like, it's not going to happen. You have to commit to it. You have to commit to your own well-being. You have to commit to the love of yourself first. That's the thing too that a lot of folks are skipping in all of this, is that we spend so much of our life looking for external validation and not loving ourselves enough to create boundaries and these type of things, and even just the way we process our emotions and everything else, because a lot of us end up just playing roles for other folks. But the message I want to give to everybody is that there is peace on the other side of that. Joy and pain, sunshine and rain, it's all the same thing. You just have to transmute those things and change them into your true purpose. And the other thing I will tell you is that there is no star rating system for trauma. There's not. The guy who saw 25 dead bodies, and whatever else, compared to the girl over here whose daddy just didn't hug her enough. Those are all equal traumas. We're not going to say she just didn't hug her enough, because what he didn't do for her caused her a level of trauma that this same guy over here experienced with those 25 bodies in terms of functionality and failure to thrive. So there is no trauma rating system. We have to just have compassion, empathy, and love for everybody who's been exposed to any of these type of things. And the only thing that gets us through that is those things, and community. It's all about where you land when you're done, because you can't make a decision to change and then go right back to doing the same stuff. My daddy used to say, you can't fly with eagles if you hang around a bunch of turkeys. So
It's true.
it's all about where you
Michael,
land. It's community.
I am just in awe, and I thank you so much for for doing what you do, and I know that you do it. It's heartfelt, and I'm going to make sure that folks have all the information. We're going to leave below that, and those that would like to reach out to you. Thank you for doing what you're doing. And,
Thank you.
karma, you know how karma works. You'll
Oh,
always
yeah.
be blessed for helping others. And
Thank
all
you.
the best to you. And I hope that this will continue to grow and grow, and more people will come to realize that there is help out here, when you need it, because so many people do need help,
There is.
especially today, people need help. So thank you so much for joining me just for a few moments. I appreciate you. I thank you, and keep doing what you're doing here in Mexico to help others. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share my message. I really do.
It's my pleasure. Bye-bye.